Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Monday. How's the weekend? Okay. Do anything fun?
Very nice.
What's that?
Very nice.
It was very nice. Were fun things done?
Not really.
Was excitement had?
Nothing really exciting.
Nothing really exciting? Just kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah. It was nice. Did you guys get outside at least a little bit?
Nope.
Didn't go outside? Just stayed in your place like a hermit? Peeked out of the curtains sometimes?
Yeah, a bit.
A bit. Yeah. My fiance and I went to Fort Langley. We kind of hung out there for a little bit. It's nice. It's kind of cute. We got some baked goods and a coffee and walked around. And what else did we do? We went engagement ring shopping. That was very fun. Not so much for me because I don't get any. See, it's kind of sexist, right? Because men don't get engagement rings. Only women do, right? So guys are kind of left out of it. It's kind of sad. Well, we can talk about that later when we get to sexism if you want. Okay, so Adon is here. Good morning, Adon. Let's go. So on Friday, on Friday, of course, we were watching Mean Girls. Partly for enjoyment, but partly for illustrating some sociological concepts which we had talked about, right? And we said, of course, the whole premise of this movie is the idea that Katie has been off in Africa with her zoologist parents for her entire life. She's been taught by them. And so she's never been to a real school, right? And of course, we see that her parents moved back to the States and she is dropped into this new bubble, right? This new kind of society in which she has no socialization, right? She doesn't really know the values, the beliefs, the sort of norms of behavior. She doesn't know the social structure or how she fits into it. She doesn't really know any of those things, right? And so the first few days we kind of see her stumbling around. She doesn't really understand how to interact with people, right? People are kind of rude to her because, you know, people are used to being like that in high school, and she's a little confused, and teachers are expecting her to know rules that she's never heard of, and she's totally lost, right? She's totally lost in this new world. And fortunately, she makes friends with Janice and Damien, and in part, they're going to try to socialize her, right? They're going to try and teach her some cultural or some societal lessons so that she can survive, right? What are some of the things that Damien and Janice kind of teach Katie before she kind of gets sucked into the plastics? What do they kind of teach her? This is a tougher question maybe, but
What do they teach her?
yeah. Actually,
Just the location in the student zone.
oh yeah, so she definitely in the cafeteria. Janice definitely explains all of the kind of social groups in the school, right? Who they are and kind of, well, I guess who they are is also a description of what they're like sometimes, right? So we get a little overview of that. Damien definitely tells Katie that joining the mathletes is social suicide, right? Yeah, maybe that's all. Maybe that's kind of all that they teach her until she gets kind of sucked in with the plastics, right? So we said there's all those social groups, right? And they had the sort of membership of the group has to do a little bit with gender sometimes, a little bit with race sometimes, and maybe a little bit with like interests or activity sometimes. And also there's a social status, right? So we kind of, and it's kind of interesting, right? Because as we kind of went through the cafeteria there, the preppy guys, the jocks, the Asian nerds, the cool Asians, the the unfriendly black hotties, the band geeks, all of these different groups. If I asked you to kind of put them into the social structure, who's the most popular and who's the least, do you think you'd be able to do it? Yeah, you probably would, right? So, which is interesting in itself, right? This is kind of a trope or a thing we see done in movies a lot, right? Where we see social groups or social cliques in high school. And in many of these movies, they're kind of all the same, right? The same kind of people are on top, the same kind of people are on the bottom, right? And so we said that, if we looked at the kind of people that were on the top, that could tell us a little something about what this society values, right? And so who's on the top of this social pyramid at the school? The who? Yeah, the plastics, right? The three girls, they're definitely up there. Who else might be up there? The preppy ones? Yeah, they're probably up there, although this movie doesn't really deal with those guys very much, but some movies do. And maybe who else? Who? The who? Who? Oh, okay, yeah, okay. And sorry, what other? Maybe one other group. Okay, maybe the cool Asians, right? So, what could we say about what this society values based on who's on top? Why are they up there?
Money and looks.
Right? So those people have money, or at least they have enough money to, well, yeah, they have money, right? They're all good looking. The preppy guys, even though we don't really see them, preppy guys are pretty good looking if you're into that sort of American Eagle kind of look, I guess. Yeah, the preppy guys are cute. What?
They have fame.
They have who?
Fame. Like,
Oh, they have fame?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so they have money, they're attractive, they have popularity, but that's kind of part of the question, right? Is like, yes, they're popular, but why? Right? Well, why are these groups the most popular ones in school? And Avatej is right. They have money in some cases. They have good looks. They're attractive people. If we look at the jocks, they're sports stars, right? And so they're kind of, the football team can kind of be the celebrities of the high school, depending on what high school you go to. The Americans are much more into football than we are up here, but in American schools, it's a bigger deal, I think. So yeah, those things that kind of, it's important to sort of look at who's on top to try to figure out what those societal values are, right? The reason that the plastics are on the top is because they express or they embody things that the society thinks is good and cool, right? If this was a society where musical talent was the most important thing in the world, well, the sexually active band geeks would be on the top, right? Because they're the musically talented ones. But again, this society doesn't so much care about that, right? This society cares about looks and money and style, right? And maybe athletic ability, maybe. So we went through some of the rules. I assume every group has rules, but we really only get to know the plastics rules. What are they? What are the rules the plastics have to follow? What's that?
Ponytail once a week.
Right? Ponytail once a week? Pink on Wednesday. On Wednesday we wear pink. Yep, sweatpants and jeans only on Friday. Not that you must wear them, but you can only wear them on Friday. What if you want to buy a new piece of clothing? Group approval, right? You need group approval. What if you want to date one of your friend's exes? No, right? That's just the rules of feminism. It's not, but that's what Gretchen says. True, right? And of course, the punishment for breaking one of these rules,
You can't sit with
Not
them.
sit at the table.
can't sit, yeah, can't sit at the table with them, right? And again, I think on Friday I said that may not sound like much, but that's brutal, right? Because you get socially excluded in front of everyone, right? And the next thing you know, everyone's going to be talking about you, right? And everyone's going to be like, oh, what's happening? Is she getting kicked out? What did she do, right? And it's a very uncomfortable position to be in, right? To be socially excluded, but then to have it happen in front of everybody, right? While everyone's kind of sitting there, eating their cheese fries and judging you. It's a very uncomfortable thing to have happen, right? So Gretchen says that it's better to be in a social group than not in one. And why did we say that was? I think we came up with a few things. Why is it better to be? Because of course Regina's treating her horribly, right? And so, but Gretchen's like, it's better to be in a group than not. Why is it better to be in a group than not?
Because you'll be lonely.
Right? There's a loneliness factor, right? Gretchen has, 2 or 3 friends around her, which is better than none, I guess. She's still friends with Karen, of course. Why else?
She wants to lose her social status.
She doesn't want to lose her social status, right? As part of the plastics, she's on the top of the school, right? Everybody treats her kind of like a princess sort of thing. And if she were kicked out, would she still get princess treatment? Yeah, maybe not, right? Maybe not. And who knows what kind of treatment she'll get, because she's probably been mean to a lot of the other students, right? If she was kicked out of the plastics and she didn't have the protection of Regina and Karen, it'd go pretty rough for her, right? People might not be friendly to Gretchen in the same way, right? So she's kind of in a little protective bubble, and if she was outside of the bubble, might be kind of uncomfortable, right? Why else? Why else is it better to be in one than out of one for her?
You want attention.
Right? So it's probably true that Gretchen likes she likes her status as popular girl, right? She likes that people talk about her and idolize her, and oh, it's Gretchen Wieners, She kind of probably likes that, and so she probably fears to lose it. It's possible. What else might she fear to lose in being kicked out of the plastics? What else might she fear to lose? It's in here.
She doesn't want to lose part of herself.
Yeah, right? She might lose part of herself, part of her identity, right? Part of who she is being part of that group, right? Especially in high school, right? High school is it can be a very kind of intense environment, right? There's everybody's trying to figure out who they are and their identity. People kind of know you, and there's reputations and all that kind of stuff. And so part of Gretchen's high school identity is being part of this group. And if she were to be kicked out, she would lose a piece of that, right? And so who is Gretchen Wieners if she's not one of the plastics? Right? And so she might have to, that wouldn't be the end of the world for her. She would figure it out, but she would kind of lose a piece of her social identity, and she'd have to rebuild it, right? And that's kind of a scary and uncomfortable process, right? And so, yeah, she may fear to do that, right? She may fear to have that happen, and that's understandable, right? It's hard to quit things, or to leave things, or worse, to be kicked out of things, right? That's humans, right? We're very sensitive to being socially excluded, right? That's why it works so well as a punishment, right? In all cultures, right? Even just the slightest little, you know, evidence that we're kind of excluding someone or pushing them away has effects on people. People are very sensitive to it, right? So sitting at another table in the cafeteria, strong punishment, right? Getting kicked out of the plastics, that would be brutal, right? Just like being kicked off the football team, right? Oof. That would be harsh, right? That would be a fall from grace right there. Right? So again, people are very sensitive to that, but that's why it works so well to try and encourage people to follow the rules. We said that Katie she almost starts to become Regina, right? She's trying to destroy Regina, but at the same time, she's kind of evolving into her somehow, which is weird. Why is that happening? What does that say about socialization? Or is it weird? I think it's weird. Do you think it's weird? That she's turning into the thing that she...
She hated, but somehow evolved it.
Yeah. Is that weird? Yeah. Kind of weird? Why is it happening though?
I mean, influence.
Okay. Give me more. One word is never an answer, unless it's yes or no. But what do you mean influence?
She learned everything from her.
Oh, okay. She learns everything from her, norms, values, beliefs, right? She's being socialized by Regina, isn't she? Right? And Regina is a very powerful agent of socialization, right? Whatever Regina George likes or says or does, that has a very powerful effect on the people immediately around her, but also in the school around her, right? The case of the sabotaged shirt, right? Janice was trying to ruin Regina's shirt. Regina's like, okay, I'm just gonna rock this. And the next day, everyone's doing it, right? Everyone is copying her because, again, she's a very strong agent of socialization. And, you know, celebrities and popular people are like this, right? When they do something or say something, it encourages other people to do the same thing, right? They kind of have that power, right? Celebrities have that power. Regina has that power too. She's an agent of socialization. She's also, of course, very psychologically manipulative, right? But that's a whole other. The psychology of Regina George is another class. But yeah, she's powerful that way too, right? She knows how to manipulate other people to get what she wants. And we saw this last question, we saw this on Friday, didn't we? Did we see Regina have to go sit at another table? Did see that, right? And what was happening there in terms of socialization?
She broke it.
Broke the rule, right? And then she was kicked, she was punished, right? She was just like we said. And what does Regina say when Karen's like, you're wearing sweatpants, you can't sit with us? Yeah, Regina's like, those rules aren't real, right? Yeah, and in some ways they're not, right? There's no reason why you shouldn't wear sweatpants on Monday. Do whatever you want, right? The world will not notice. But again, it does illustrate something about human social behavior, right? All of the rules are made up, right? Is there any reason why I can't wear a dress to work today? No, right? But there's kind of a rule, right? Men are generally not supposed to wear dresses, right? Why we came up with that rule, I have no idea, but that's the rule, right? And if I break it, there are going to be consequences, right? People are going to look at me differently or interact with me differently. And it's the same thing with Regina, right? It's a made up rule, right? Pointless, you might even say. But it doesn't matter because if everyone believes in the rule and enforces it, it has power. And we see it does have a lot of power. Regina George, the queen bee, gets kicked out of her table and has to go sit somewhere else, right? And so, yeah, social rules, social norms, social beliefs, they have power, right? Especially if everyone believes them, right? If everyone believes them to be true, they are powerful and people will be punished, right? And we see Regina George, ironically, punished by her own rule, right? Do you think she made up that rule? She probably did, right? She made the rule and now she's going to be punished by it. And it doesn't matter, right? It is made up, but it doesn't matter. Okay. Shall we watch the rest of this movie? Get some closure here? Okay. So, I'm going to. Adon, I'm sure you know how to find the movie online, so I'll let you do it. I think we got to. Well, hang on. I'll tell you where we got to. I'm going to start it. Adon, I'm going to start it at an hour and 2 minutes. Okay? So I'll just put this on the screen. There. So Adon, that's where we're going to start. 1 hour, 2 minutes. And then we're going to watch to the end, and then we're going to take a break and come back, okay? Cool. So we'll see you in just a little bit, my friend. you're absorbing those social messages, right? Really, and probably not with it, without really realizing it, because you're probably listening or watching those things to be entertained, right? We watch series because they're entertaining and they're fun, right? We listen to music because we enjoy it, right? But it also socializes us, right? We also absorb messages from it. Many of the kind of social messages or rules that we absorb are arbitrary, right? Arbitrary is in they're kind of made up. They're not really based on any clear logic, right? There's no clear logic about why you should wear sweatpants or jeans on Friday, right? That's just the rule. But they have powerful consequences, right? If we follow the rules, if we obey them, people tend to reward us, right? And again, I don't know what your school experience has been like in the past, but that's part of that is, the struggle to fit in, right? When you're going to school, when you're going to high school, you want to fit in, right? And basically what that is that you want to follow the societal rules of the high school, right? You want to fit in so as you will be socially rewarded, right? If you stand out, right, if you're breaking the rules, then you will be socially punished, right? And again, I don't know what your experience has been like. Some schools are better for this than others, or some are worse. But that's what kids and adults are trying to do, right? They're trying to fit into their social environment so they don't get punished. Right? Yeah. Most societies, all societies, have a hierarchy, right? Some people have more status and power and respect than others. And the position that we are in that hierarchy, to some degree, has to do with the social groups we belong to, okay? Or at least in a social justice fashion, right? So depending on kind of who we are, that places us in a certain spot in the social hierarchy, right? And so Katie kind of enters the high school and she doesn't really fit into the hierarchy, or at least she's trying to figure out where she fits, and so is the school, right? Everyone's trying to figure out who she is, and so she's kind of with Janice and Damien, and Janice and Damien are kind of floating somewhere in the middle, I would guess, right? But then she kind of gets sucked into the plastics, right? And that sucks her to the top of the social ladder, right? And so again, the social group that she belongs to affects where she is in that hierarchy, in that structure, and it affects how people treat her, right? People at the top are treated differently than people at the bottom, right? And again, I'm not saying that that's right or good or desirable, I'm just saying that's often the way things are. Yeah, and so an important part going forward is that our socialization, the messages we absorb, start to work as a kind of a lens, right? A way through which we interpret the world, right? So people's behaviors, events that happen around us are interpreted through our socialization, right? And so it's important to pay attention to social messaging because it becomes the lens through which you see the world, right? And the social messages you absorb will affect how you interpret that world, okay? Okay, good so far? Is everyone okay? Does everyone anyone have questions, concerns, statements, arguments, opinions, queries? No. Okay. Right. So I'm just gonna bump us onto this. Okay. So we've got a good grasp, I think, of culture and socialization. We've got a good grasp of Lindsay Lohan movies. Now we move on to oppression and power. Okay. So these are kind of this is a short section that just deals with a few concepts that we need to talk about the sort of bigger social justice issues, sexism, racism, etc. Okay. Now, you've probably heard both of these words before, I'm guessing, right? Oppression and power. Okay. So let me start out here with this. Okay? So again, we just saw this. We just saw this in the movie. This is Janice's map of the North Shore cafeteria with all of the social groups that we heard about. Okay? Now, again, society often organizes people into a social hierarchy, and we talked about that. But I also want to introduce this idea of binary opposites before we go any further. Okay? So binary, bi is 2, right? And opposites are opposite. Okay? Now, society, and increasingly people who want to think about things, it's very tempting to think about things in binary opposites, right? Something is either one or the other, right? It's black or white, up or down, hot or cold, right? Cool or not cool. Boys or girls, men and women, kids and adults, cats and dogs, right? Sweet or salty. What else? There's tons of them, right? And for some reason, humans kind of like to organize things according to these two opposite baskets. What are you? Are you this or that? Are you good or bad, right? Good or evil, right? So humans kind of like to do this, and societies like to do it as well. And often we kind of not only look at the world this way, but also try to define ourselves this way, right? And to define ourselves by what we're not, okay? So, for instance, part of, hang on here, there we go. Part of my identity is that I am a man, right? Right? Everybody gets that? I'm putting out that vibe, okay? I'm a man, right? And part of that identity is that I am in fact not a woman, right? So there's all these things that men are supposed to be, and I am some or most of those maybe, right? But I'm also not a woman, right? Part of my identity is what I am, but also what I'm not, right? I construct my identity that way. Canadians do this very frequently because there are certain things that it means to be Canadian, right? There are certain kind of ideas we have about what Canadians are like. But us Canadians, we also define ourselves by what we're not, right? We're not Americans, right? You know what Americans are like. We're not that, right? So Canadians we say, yes, we're like this, but we're also not that thing over there, right? We're not that. And again, this is a very kind of, I guess, useful way to organize the world, right? To take two opposite things and say, what is it, this or that? And we can do this for a lot of the social groups at the high school as well, right? So if I took the jocks, for instance, are they popular or not popular? The jocks, the football players? Popular, right? Are they guys or girls? Guys. Are they attractive or not attractive? Yeah, usually our stereotypical idea is that these guys are good-looking, buff guys, right? The same thing for the plastics, right? Are they popular or not? Popular, right? Guys or girls? Girls. Attractive or not? Right? And so all of the different groups at the high school can be pretty clearly organized. You know, are they cool or not cool, right? Are they popular or not popular? Good looking or not? Rich or poor? You know, and you can kind of divide things out into these two opposing factions. And we kind of do this a lot in society as well, right? And we do it with all of the sort of social identities that we're talking about in this class, right? If we divide things kind of into their opposites, we've got binary oppositions for race, for class, for gender, for sexuality, for ability status. And again, just like in Mean Girls, these groups have different amounts of power, right? Different amounts of status within society. Again, I'm not saying that that's desirable. I'm not saying that it's good. I'm not saying that's the way it should be. I'm just saying that that's often the way it is, okay? But the other thing I'll just mention about these binary opposites is that often what we find is that people don't fit very easily into one category or another, right? People are not good or evil usually, right? Sometimes good people do bad things, sometimes bad people do good things, or maybe they're not quite so bad, right? So even though society and even we might want to say, okay, does this thing go in this basket or this basket? I need to know. Often what we find is that there's a lot of things that don't fit in the basket. And the baskets themselves are arbitrary, they're imaginary, right? We've just decided that this is what we're going to do. We're going to divide society up like this, right? But it doesn't mean that the categories are real, right? Just like the rules that Regina made up, sometimes the categories aren't real either, right? So, a definition. This is a tricky one. There's a lot going on here with oppression, and so I'm going to try and make this a little bit simple. This is what we'll say that oppression is. Now, oppression is not something that one person can do to another, okay? At least in social justice terms, okay? You may use oppression differently in regular life or in media or whatever. I should include video games in media too. I always forget them, but they should be in there. Oppression is something that happens between groups, okay? It's usually something that happens at the level of a society, okay? And it usually has to do with the way that society operates, okay? So we said that we could think of society like a cell, right? Like a biological cell. And inside that cell, there's a bunch of social institutions, right? Mitochondrias and Golgi complexes and a bunch of other little organelles that I forgot the name of, right? They're all in that, floating around in that cell, operating, doing the things that the cell needs to do. When we talk about oppression, we're talking about the way in which the cell operates, right? The way in which those social institutions interact. We're not really talking about the way, any one thing happens. And so we're not talking about individual interactions, we're talking about how society works as a whole. And when we're dealing with oppression, we're dealing with a relationship between two groups, right? And so the idea here is that the way that society operates, the way that it runs, the social messages that are floating around that we're all absorbing, the idea here is that they work to give an advantage to one group and disadvantage the other group, okay? So again, it's not necessarily about anyone doing anything, right? It's about how the machine works, okay? And it works in such a way that some people get benefits and some people don't get those benefits, or they're actually disadvantaged, okay? That's the idea behind oppression, and that's what makes it tricky, right? Because if someone says a racist thing, right? If they say a racist thing, that's not really oppression, right? That's a jerk saying a racist thing. But oppression is different, right? It's bigger. It's the way that the machine works. And sometimes it even works in such a way that it's hard to tell, right? It's hard to really know what's going on, right? Because it's hard to kind of see how society works as a whole, right? All of us can only look at things through our own eyes, right? Through our own perspective. It's hard to really take in how everything is working for everyone. But there are ways to do it, and we will do that. The other terms I'll say here is dominant and minoritized group, okay? So the dominant group in a society is one that has power, right? They have that prestige, they have that status, they get benefits from the way society works. Minoritized groups, they don't have all of those same benefits, right? They are disadvantaged in some way, okay? And so, yeah, oppression is really kind of a relationship between groups, a relationship between social groups. So here, I know my head's in the way there, I apologize. Here's kind of a way that we could describe or categorize or think about some oppressive relationships. Okay? So, one quick note is that a chart like this doesn't work everywhere in the world, right? So, if we go to the top, here in North America, white people are the dominant group. Right? White people are kind of the ones that have the power, right? They have control of social institutions, right? They receive more benefits than people who are not white, right? People of color. And the relationship between those two groups is called racism, right? When one group is in control of or benefits and the other one is not benefiting, that's a racist relationship that those two groups have. But again, that only works in some countries, right? If we go to China, the dominant group is not white people, right? The dominant group in China is Chinese people, right? And white people like me would be in a minoritized group there. So again, it kind of depends on where you go. This is kind of created for like North America, Europe kind of thing. You know, your situation may be different, right? So here we have classism, right? The owning class, the people who own property and the people who have inherited money, right? The 1%, as they're sometimes called, right? That's the dominant group. All of us other people, we're in a minoritized group, right? We are somewhat disadvantaged by the structure of society, right? Some of us just a little bit, some of us much more so. Right? Sexism, right? So men here are the dominant group in North America, right? People who are not men, so women, trans men, trans women, people who are gender queer or gender fluid, we'll get to all those terms later. Those people are in the minoritized group, right? Men have a bunch of benefits and advantages that these other genders do not have, right? Same thing with heterosexism. Heterosexuals are in the dominant group, right? They are the most common, right? But also keep in mind, we'll talk about this later, keep in mind that this isn't just about numbers, okay? It's not just about majorities, it's about who has power, right? If you know anything about the history of South Africa, for instance, there are Afrikaners, these Dutch people, they're white, they were controlling South Africa, and then there was a large black population. But all the power was being held by the white South Africans, not the black South Africans. And so even though the whites were in a minority, they were the dominant group because they were the ones that had the power. Okay? So it's not about numbers, it's about who controls society's institutions. Okay? Heterosexuals, for the most part, control society's institutions here. So people who are not heterosexual, people who are gay or lesbian or bisexual or pansexual or demisexual or asexual, etc., those people are in a minoritized group, right? And I won't go through all of them. We have Christians here versus people who are non-Christian. We have ability, people who are able-bodied, right? People whose physical bodies work normally, I'm going to say, in quotes, normally. And people who don't have any severe mental illnesses, right? Those are all able-bodied people. Over here we have people with disabilities, right? Whether they are physical or mental or emotional, those people have disadvantages. Right? We can have nationalism, right? Citizens having more opportunities, more benefits than people who are either immigrants or people who are perceived to be immigrants. Colonialism, right? People who are settlers, right? People who have come to this country as part of its colonial past, and then indigenous people, people who were here before, right? The original inhabitants of this land. So these are kind of all the ways in which we can have oppression within society, all the ways in which some people can have power and benefit, and other people can have less, right? And so when we talk about oppression, we're talking about a relationship between groups, right? And the way society works. Again, nobody has to do anything specific for this to happen, right? It's not about individuals interacting. It's not about someone saying something racist, right? Or discriminating against someone because of sexism or whatever. It's more about how the entire machine works. Okay. Whew, okay. I'm going to press pause because that's more than enough for today. Tomorrow, when you come back here, we'll deal a little bit more with oppression and power. I've got some things for you to read. Did I say Wednesday we were going to have a quiz? Is that what I said? Okay. I'll talk about the quiz a little bit more on tomorrow. Talk about the quiz a little bit more tomorrow, and then we'll have it on Wednesday. Okay. Okay. That is all. You can pack it up. I'll see you tomorrow.